Hi, I'm Dahlia, and what I'm about to share isn't just about one live stream gone wrong. It's about years of silence, manipulation, and the moment I finally decided not to stay quiet anymore. It started with a freeze frame, just one paused second on a screen that changed how I saw everything, including my sister. The screen blinked, then froze. One frame, 1 second. A toddler, my nephew, falling forward toward a balloon-wrapped table, his small hands mid-air, panic barely registering on his little face. And right there, just behind him, frozen in the same still frame, my sister Vivian, smiling. That smile. Not a surprised, oh no kind of expression. Not a maternal gasp, but a smile, barely visible, but unmistakable. Crooked, deliberate, almost entertained. I sat there, the live stream buffering endlessly, hands clenched around my phone, heartbeat crawling up my throat. For a moment, I thought maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I was reading into it too much. But you know that feeling when something doesn't sit right? Not just in your mind, but in your bones? This was that. Vivian had told me I could watch online. Her voice had been syrupy sweet when she said it on the phone a week earlier. You totally don't have to come all the way here, Dahlia. We'll stream it. You'll see everything. Everything, huh? Apparently not. The screen stayed gray for 3 minutes before it went black. I refreshed, checked the Wi-Fi, clicked the link again. Event has ended. That was it. I stared at the screen, the reflection of my own frown faintly visible in the dark glass. My stomach curled. Was I overreacting? Probably. But if you've ever had someone manipulate your place in a family your entire life, then you know, it's never just about the thing, it's about the pattern. I texted Vivian. Stream froze at a weird moment. All okay? No response. I texted Mom. Hey, something happened with the stream. Looked like the baby fell? Her reply came back fast. Oh no, everything was perfect. We missed you, sweetie. Missed me. She always says that. Misses me from across the table. From the Christmas card I'm not in. From the family photo where they forgot to tag me. She misses me like people miss traffic. Like people miss their dentist appointments. I opened the family group chat. Dozens of photos from the party were pouring in. Vivian in her powder blue dress holding the baby. Vivian laughing while someone popped champagne. Vivian cutting the cake. Vivian glowing in the golden hour light. No tags, no shoutouts, no wish Dahlia were here. I hovered over the comment box, typed, the feed froze during the fall. Hope he's okay. Deleted. Typed again. Looked like someone smiled mid-chaos, lol. Deleted again. I set my phone down, took a deep breath, picked it back up, opened Instagram. Vivian's story was already live. Such a perfect day with our favorite people. Favorite people. Right. Tommy wandered into the room. My son, 6 years old and bright-eyed like a sunrise. Did you see the baby party? He asked. Yeah, I said quietly, forcing a smile. Did you go there? No. Aunt Vivian said I could watch it online. He frowned. Why? Because Vivian always knows how to pretend inclusion while tightening exclusion. Because that's her skill. Making you question your reality while smiling into your face. Because in her world, I'm always the backup singer to her solo act. I don't know, baby, I answered. Just the way it worked out. Tommy sat beside me, drawing stick figures of our family. I looked over his shoulder. It was me, him, and a huge dog with glasses. He handed me a crayon. You can draw Aunt Vivian if you want. I hesitated. Maybe later. That night, after putting Tommy to bed, I re-watched the recorded video, what little of it I had. The moment, the fall, the smile, freeze, it chilled me, and not just because of what I saw, but because of what I knew in my gut. It was intentional. Vivian always plans her optics. She curates life the way some people curate Pinterest boards. Controlled, aesthetic, centered. And I'm the grainy, unedited Polaroid left in a shoebox. But here's the part that matters. That smile in the frame. She wasn't smiling at the baby. She was smiling at the thought of me watching. Power, in her hands, delivered through digital exile. I didn't confront her, not yet, because I knew this wasn't a one-off. This was a signal, a spark. And I was done freezing. I didn't need to shout, or accuse, or play her game. But I could prepare, watch, wait. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't a punch, it's the quiet reclaiming of your story. If you've ever caught someone smiling at the wrong moment, you know. When I was a kid, the house always smelled like cinnamon and anxiety. We weren't the kind of family that screamed. No. We preferred the tight-lipped smiles and backhanded compliments. That was how control worked in our house. You didn't fight. You swallowed, you smiled, and you stayed in line. I remember sitting on the staircase, watching Vivian explain to our mother why the living room curtains were scorched. I hadn't even been in the house when it happened, but there she was, trembling like a leaf, blaming me. I told her not to light the candle, she whimpered. She wouldn't listen. And that was it. No questioning, no room for defense. I was grounded before I even spoke. That was Vivian's gift, the ability to convince people the world bent her way. And maybe it did. I can't recall a single moment from childhood where someone chose my side without me begging for it first. Sitting at the kitchen table the morning after the baby shower fiasco, I watched Tommy spread peanut butter across a piece of toast, with his tongue sticking out in deep concentration. The innocence in that action, the simplicity, made something in my chest ache. I didn't want that for him. I didn't want him to grow up learning how to minimize himself to make room for someone else's ego. I didn't want him to feel the way I had. My phone buzzed. The family chat. Another photo. This time, it was a throwback. Vivian at 16, holding a science fair ribbon, all teeth and victory. The caption from my mom read, "My little genius always made us so proud." I stared at it, my jaw clenching. That ribbon had been mine. I made the project. Vivian had dropped out midway, said it was boring, but took credit when I placed first. I'd stood beside her at the award table, smiling because Mom said, "Be a good sport. Your sister needs this more than you." I didn't comment. I didn't react. I just saved the photo. It was proof. Not of one betrayal, but of a lifetime of erasure, painted in pastel smiles and pretty captions. I had forgotten how many times she'd rewritten our story, casting herself as the hero and me as the complication. It wasn't just childhood. When I got engaged at 23, she accidentally posted my ring photo 2 days early, tagging herself as the one who introduced us. At my baby shower for Tommy, she gave a toast that started with, "We never thought Dahlia would be a mom, right?" and ended with, "But she's doing pretty well." Pretty well. Always just enough kindness to look like love. Always just enough shade to make sure I never forgot my place. Later that day, after I dropped Tommy off at school, I found myself driving past the old neighborhood. The house we grew up in had been repainted, the shutters replaced, but the driveway was the same. I remembered sitting on its cracked edge the day Dad left. Vivian had cried, of course. She was 6, small, dramatic. I'd held her hand while Mom wept in the hallway. But when relatives came to visit, they only remembered how brave Vivian had been. I didn't exist in the retelling. I pulled into a small coffee shop nearby and found myself texting Cassie, my old best friend. We hadn't spoken in 2 years, not since I moved back to the city. "Hey, random, but do you remember that science fair thing we did in 10th grade?" She replied immediately. "Duh! That was your project. Your volcano was legendary. Vivian barely showed up." I stared at that message longer than I should have. Something about having someone else remember it the way I did felt like a piece of me clicking back into place. We made plans for lunch. When we met the next day, she looked the same, warm, grounded. She hugged me tight and pulled back with a smirk. "So, tell me, what's she done now?" I didn't ask who she was. We both knew. I told her everything, the live stream, the smile, the group chat silence. She didn't flinch. Classic Vivian, she muttered. You know, in college she told people she was an only child. I blinked. What? Yeah, I only found out through someone who knew you. She said, Oh, you mean Vivian's sister? And they were like, Vivian has a sister? She shrugged. It pissed me off. It did more than piss me off. It settled something. Vivian hadn't just excluded me from moments. She'd tried to erase me entirely. Back at home that night, I tucked Tommy into bed. He looked up at me with those eyes, the ones that held the whole world in them. Mom, he said quietly, do you think people ever pretend not to love someone, even if they do? My heart stopped. Why do you ask that? He shrugged. Just thinking about Aunt Vivian? I kissed his forehead. Sometimes people get lost, baby. They forget how to show love the right way. He nodded. You don't forget. I left his room with tears pressing behind my eyes, but refused to let them fall. In the silence of my bedroom, I pulled out my laptop and opened a blank document. I started to write, not a message, not a confrontation, just a record. I listed every moment, every rewrite, every quiet dig, every public embarrassment masked as a joke. I wrote until my fingers ached, until I could breathe again. Then I stared at the screen and whispered to myself, no more. If you've ever needed someone to simply remember it the way you do, you're not alone. Rain tapped at the windowpane as I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, a cold cup of coffee forgotten beside me. I'd been piecing together memories since I tapped out that list on the blank page, walking through childhood wounds, parsing the baby shower freeze, and letting Cassie's validations settle like gravity. But tonight, I needed proof. Not just feelings or memories. I needed facts. Vivian had always been good at photo ops in crowded rooms, but her real power lay behind the scenes, in whispered suggestions, in deleting tags, in telling half-truths. If I could find her patterns, I could turn our unspoken war into something tangible. I opened my inbox to find a message buried in social, from a name I didn't recognize, Laura R. It read, Hey Dahlia, this is awkward, but I was there yesterday. I work for Stream On. I noticed something weird when your niece fell. Vivian stood and waved at the stream control before the feed cut. I'm sure it was an accident, but I had the server logs if you want them. I stared. Server logs, hardware logs, a control room glitch, but those logs would show deliberate disconnect, not a simple crash. My heart pounded. That could flip everything. I messaged her back immediately. Yes, please. I really appreciate it. While I waited, I remembered Evelyn, their wedding photographer from 5 years ago. Vivian had booked her for a photo shoot, then re-uploaded half the images and deleted the selfies where I looked. Well, human. Photos with me smiling were gone. Photos with Vivian's arm around Mom remained. I messaged Evelyn too, hoping she'd answer. My phone buzzed. Logger file from Laura. I downloaded it carefully, anxiety knotting in my stomach. The logs showed manual drop in feed 4 seconds before the baby's crash. Then, just before that, a cursor hovering over cut stream. No glitch, no automatic dropout. Purposeful disconnection. My world narrowed. I felt the oxygen thinning in my chest. Proof. I had proof. Staring at the file, I realized that Vivian's smile earlier wasn't happiness. It wasn't even triumph. It was the shape of control. Somewhere in me, a quiet voice spoke. This changes everything. 2 days later, I found Evelyn's reply. A simpler note. Happy to help if you'd like the original gallery. She paid me, but I can still share the unedited ones. There they were. Photos from the baby shower the day before. A candid shot of me, smiling at Tommy's hand tightly gripping my fingers. One of those sharp ones taken just after the freeze, where I looked startled, confused. That image had been deleted. The clean, curated aftermath remained instead. I closed my eyes, pressing my forehead to the cool laptop screen. Someone had intentionally removed my trace, streamed me out, photos removed me. But here I was, even if it took rain-soaked nights and digital breadcrumbs to see it. When Tommy got home, sticky-faced from school, I pulled him onto my lap and told him that Aunt Vivian had made a mistake, that sometimes we see people do things that hurt us. He frowned. Then he asked quietly, "Will she say sorry?" I didn't know. I told him, "Sometimes, just knowing the truth is a start." He hugged me and whispered, "I like your house better." And maybe Dew had what I needed tonight, a true anchor. Over the next few days, I printed server logs and photos, laid them out in my office corner, the side of my apartment that looked more like a jury room than a living space. In that cramped sanctuary, I'd begun assembling a silent case, not to accuse, but to illuminate. Because that smile, that freeze, wasn't a fluke. It was part of a bigger story. Late one night, my phone rang. Caller ID. Mom. I hesitated before answering. "Sweetie, how are you?" Her voice was syrupy, polite, but I'd heard the undertones for years. "I saw the photos of yesterday. Such a lovely setup. I'm so proud of Vivian." My chest tightened. "Mom, about that. I know what happened with the live stream." "What do you mean?" She sounded confused. It was too practiced. "I have logs that show Vivian cut the stream, and photos," I said quietly. There was a pause so long I thought the line had dropped. "Oh, Dahlia," she whispered. "I just assumed it was tech issues. You know, internet." I could hear her brain turning, asking where the proof was. I answered, "Mom, I'll send you the files. And I want you to know this isn't about her or me. It's about being seen, about knowing when someone erases you. And I deserve to be seen." Silence again. Then, "Let me look at them. We'll talk later." I hung up, legs shaking. I had pierced the silence, opened a wound in the family image, but I felt fierce. I felt brave. That night, as I arranged the photos around the logs, the doorbell rang. My heart raced. I opened the door to find Cassie, umbrella dripping. She stepped in, scooped me up in a hug. "Come on," she said. "I've catered dinner." Between wine sips and soft soup, she surveyed the corner office I'd created. The files, the photos, the digital trail. "You're building a mosaic," she whispered. "It's beautiful." I realized it wasn't just about proving Vivian's wrongdoing. It was me reclaiming my place, building proof for something deeper, my sense of self. We talked late into the night about what would come next, whether to confront Vivian, whether to let it go. I didn't know yet, but I knew something fundamental had shifted. I wasn't invisible anymore. The living room was light but cold, a perfect stage for what was about to unfold. Tonight was Mom's birthday celebration, a midweek gathering, low-key on the outside, but always polished when Vivian hosted it. I walked in holding a bottle of wine, the smell of roast chicken filling the air, but my eyes were drawn straight to the television screen at the far end of the room. Vivian had set up a slideshow, perfect photos, perfectly staged. She wanted a backdrop. I caught her gaze as I entered. She gave me that practiced smile, the kind that said, "You're invited," by the rules I made. She wore a silk dress, hair pinned just so, and as always, she was the center, even in support of someone else's day. We hugged. Mom greeted me warmly. Bright eyes, genuine smile, but both pairs of lips missed a small detail. Acknowledgement of the live stream fiasco. Nobody cared yet to call it by name. I placed the wine beside the glasses and joined the small circle of guests. My cousin Max cracked a joke behind his hand. "So Viv, where's the footage from the shower? I heard something went wrong." Viv's lips curled, but only just. "Oh, you know how tech is." Her voice floated above the room. A few people laughed politely. Others shot me a look of sympathy, but nobody asked further. They were waiting for the next image on screen. The slideshow began. Vivian, birthday, Vivian, candle, Vivian blowing out candle. At the halfway mark, a brief clip flickered onto the screen. The baby shower freeze. The room paused. Vivian stepped forward, microphone in hand, intent to smooth the moment. Ah, yes, that little hiccup, she said lightly. Colin's nerves got the best of him. A few chuckles. I clenched my glass. Something in me hardened. I watched her make that innocent lie, her eyes bright with performance and yet lacking warmth. She didn't even glance at me. My heart drummed, and I realized the room was watching me, waiting for my reaction. I raised the mic. My mistake, I said, letting the silence settle like dust. That hiccup wasn't Colin's nerves. The stream was deliberately cut. I have proof. I felt my voice steady, calm, but layered with steel. Vivian's face betrayed nothing, her rehearsed mask. Dahlia, that's not necessary. I held up a printed log sheet, marked with timestamps and actions. Look here! I clicked the remote. The screen shifted to CCTV footage from the control room, provided by Laura R. Vivian's hand hovered near the cut command. She smiled, then clicked. A gasp rose. My mom gasped. I watched it all happen on the big screen. The calculated movement, the silent malice. And for the first time, Vivian faltered in appearance. She looked at me, not with sisterly reprimand, but with bleak calculation. People turned to Mom, whispering, "Is that real? Vivian, what?" Everyone searched for explanation. Max looked at me, eyebrows raised. "You did this?" he mouthed. I nodded. It's time she stopped rewriting my presence here. I let the silence settle again. Vivian swallowed. She tried to recover. It was childish. But no one let her finish. The stunned weight in the room swallowed her words. Faces shifted, some curious, some disappointed. Mom held back tears, embarrassment painted on her face. But she didn't stop me. She didn't hug her. Her eyes sought mine, a mix of regret and confusion. Her silence spoke volumes. The rest of the party continued under a tense calm. People ate cake in half whispers. Vivian sat by herself, the crown slipping. The night dripped from lavish to uneasy. As I excused myself, I felt both exhilarated and raw. Tommy tugged at my sleeve. "Mom, why did you do that?" I knelt down, took his face in my hands. Because I needed to show that it wasn't okay to erase people, even digitally. He nodded, like he understood more than his 6 years allowed. We left quietly, the apartment door clicking shut behind us like an exclamation. The air inside the apartment felt heavier the morning after the party. The windows were closed tight, but something still lingered. Not smoke, not perfume. A tension, like the remnants of a storm that didn't fully pass. I stood in the kitchen, watching Tommy chase cereal pieces with a spoon, the sound of plastic against ceramic grounding me in this new, unfamiliar calm. I'd done it. I'd shown the truth. Not in whispers, not in journals or late-night venting texts, but in a room full of people who used to only hear her side. It should have felt like victory. It didn't. It felt like exhaustion. Mom hadn't called. Vivian hadn't messaged. The group chat had gone silent, like someone had draped a white sheet over the entire family. Not even the usual weekend photos from Aunt Tessa or the daily recipe spam from Grandma. That kind of silence had weight. I wasn't naive enough to think it meant reflection. It meant recalibration. They were regrouping, waiting to see what I'd do next. I didn't want to fight anymore. I just wanted out. That afternoon, I sat in my car outside an old brick building with peeling green shutters and a crooked mailbox. It was a community center I'd once volunteered at in college. Inside, a job posting for a caregiver assistant still hung slightly crooked on the corkboard by the front door. I had experience. I had the time. And most importantly, I needed distance from everything, not to disappear, just to breathe again. A woman with silver curls and kind eyes interviewed me. Her name was Bernice. She didn't care who my sister was. She didn't ask why my last name sounded familiar. She just asked if I was patient, if I could listen, if I knew how to show up on time. I said yes to all three and meant it. I started the following Monday. My first client was an elderly woman named Lorraine. She lived alone, had a cane with a floral handle, and owned 3 identical housecoats. She loved peppermint tea and reruns of old courtroom dramas. The first week, she barely spoke. The second week, she opened up about her daughter, who hadn't visited in 4 years. She said I made her feel small, Lorraine told me, not with bitterness, but resignation. I thought I was helping her grow. I didn't say anything at first. Then I whispered, "Sometimes people shrink themselves just to stay in the room." Lorraine looked at me, and for a full beat, neither of us spoke. That night, I stared at the ceiling. I thought about how many rooms I had stayed in, how often I'd accepted silence over confrontation, how long I'd mistaken tolerance for peace. I wasn't angry anymore. That was the strangest part. The fury had burned out the night I clicked that remote and watched Vivian shrink for the first time in her life. What remained was space. And in that space, something new was forming. I called Cassie the next morning. "I'm thinking of leaving the city," I told her. She exhaled softly. "Where?" "Maybe Oregon. Somewhere smaller, calmer. Just me and Tommy. A fresh start." There was a pause, then the sound of her smile through the line. "I think you've already started, Dee." When I told Tommy, he didn't ask why. He just asked if there would be trees and if we could bring his stuffed shark. I told him yes. We packed our apartment in 3 days. The boxes weren't filled with much. Some books, clothes, drawings, my server logs. But I left the photos behind. I didn't need them, not the curated ones, not the frozen moments. I had my own now. We moved into a cottage with chipped paint and uneven floorboards, but it had a porch and a yard, and a quiet I hadn't known in years. I worked part-time at a small community clinic. Tommy started at a school where no one knew our last name. We planted mint in the backyard. We baked banana bread on Saturdays. Life didn't magically become perfect, but it became ours. One day, while sorting mail, I found an envelope with no return address. Inside was a letter. From Vivian. Her handwriting was neat, unapologetically familiar. "I watched your video," it began. "The footage. I knew you had it. I just didn't think you'd ever use it." She went on to talk about pressure, about expectations, about always needing to be the golden one. She said things I didn't expect, about jealousy, about me getting the quieter love, the deeper kind, the kind she envied, but never understood. Then came the line that stayed with me. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just don't want to pretend anymore." I read it twice, then again, and then I folded it back up and tucked it into a drawer beside my bed. Not because I was ready to forgive her, not because her words undid the years, but because it wasn't about her anymore. I didn't write back. That evening, I sat on the porch with a blanket around my shoulders and watched Tommy chase lightning bugs. I felt the cool air kiss my skin and thought about all the time I'd spent shrinking myself to fit into a version of the family that never had space for me. And here I was, finally whole, in a life where no one edited my place. No applause, no revenge, just peace. And maybe, just maybe, that was the loudest thing I could have ever said. It was a damp Wednesday afternoon when I first heard from Aunt Tessa. My phone vibrated on the kitchen counter, over a bowl of oatmeal that was already turning cold. I saw her name and a message that made me pause, even before reading the words. "Dahlia, are you okay? Heard big news about Vivian." Those words felt like an announcement taped to a movie poster. Dramatic, loud, and centered on someone else's narrative. I replied simply, "What happened?" The reply came quickly. "She's moved out, declared bankruptcy. Jason served divorce papers last night." Jason, Vivian's husband, whose grinning face once appeared in every family photo next to hers, happy and shiny. My breath caught. I hadn't expected her downfall to ever intersect with me again. We had drifted so far apart that her problems felt like gossip, not part of my life. But here it was. And the timing. They were beautiful, precarious cliffs. I stared at the screen, trying to feel something beyond curiosity. Later that evening, I found myself pacing under the warm glow of my new tiny kitchen. It was a place that smelled like fresh paint and peppermint tea. Tommy sat at the table doing his homework, oblivious to the world collapsing several states away. I closed my eyes and pictured Vivian, once the flawless golden sister, sitting across a table from Jason's lawyer. I saw her expression locked in surprise and disbelief, not grace and polish. That image, heavy with irony, pushed around in my chest until something inside me shifted again. This was not celebration. This was reality. And it landed with finality. A knock at the door pulled me back. Cassie stood there, coat-soaked, eyes soft but alert. She stepped in and studied my face. Gently, she said, "It's happening." "It is," I whispered. She moved beside me, steady. "Want to go for a walk?" I nodded. We wandered through narrow sidewalks lined with cozy homes. Something about their warmth made the news feel both trivial and tragic. We passed a little bakery, bread steaming in the window, and an older couple holding hands on the porch across the street. Life kept breathing. Cassie cleared her throat. "Are you okay?" I squeezed her hand. It's weird. On one hand, I feel vindicated, like karma or natural consequence. But on the other, I can't help thinking this is sad. She isn't me. She's not toxic by nature. She learned it. Somewhere along the way, she convinced herself she had to be. She nodded. She may reach out. Faint hope stirred in me, but I pushed it down. She didn't reach out. At least not yet. 2 nights later, I was finishing a load of laundry when my phone lit up. Vivian's name. My heart jolted out of sync. She sent a message. "I'm homeless. I need somewhere to stay." Under it, a location pin. Not in the city she grew up in. Not even near her mother's house. It was near my new town. My hands trembled. Should I reply? I stared at the phone, at the location, and closed my eyes. I thought about my own home, the substitute teacher from the crisis hotline who once told me, "You teach yourself stability by building it." That advice had carried me through. I opened the message and typed, "Come tomorrow at noon. We'll talk." The next day, I baked muffins and laid out fresh towels. I drove to the address she sent. When I pulled into the parking lot of a dingy motel, I saw her, dressed in a coat too thin, face drawn, clutching a single bag. She looked older, ghosted out. The glow was gone. I got out, approached her with cautious kindness. She lowered her head and whispered, "Dahlia." We walked inside. The room reeked of stale coffee and carpet cleaner. I put my keycard down next to the bed. We sat facing each other. She met my eyes only for a moment. Her voice was small. "I screwed up. I hurt people." I wanted to yell, to claim a mighty payback, but I didn't. Instead, I said, "Yes, you did. But you were human." Her face broke. Her composure shattered. I stayed silent. Let her feel the weight of that. After a long stretch of silence, she said, "I always thought power meant control. I didn't know it would kill me." I didn't respond. I reached across the bed, placed my hand on hers. Tears spilled. Hers and mine. Not about forgiveness, about grief. At what we both had lost. Over the following week, I cooked dinner for her, brought warm blankets, heard fragments of the woman she was underneath the facade. She wept over photographs, wedding ring, family smiles, pride that had been built on me being rewritten. A tragic realization bloomed in her eyes. One evening, she spoke softly. "Teach me how you did it. How you built a life without tearing everyone down." I closed my eyes. It took everything not to tell her to rebuild on the corners of her own shame. But instead, I said, "You start by listening, by letting peace in, by stopping the story that you have to be someone else." It wasn't enough to save her life, but it was enough to reclaim my own. A few days later, she left to find a job. She called to say she got into a women's counseling program. She didn't ask for my forgiveness. She said, "Thank you." The afternoon sunlight seeped into the living room as I set my laptop on the coffee table, its screen illuminating the center of the space I'd come to call home. Tommy was on the rug, building a fortress of Legos, humming to himself. That moment, him, The light, the quiet, felt like a fragile bubble. It was the bubble I'd been waiting to refine. My voice. I opened YouTube and stared at the blank upload page. No flash, no over-the-top reveal. Just a webcam, my face framed by the living room backdrop, the logs and documents buried in folders behind me. I clicked Go Live and exhaled. Hi, I began, voice steady but soft. This video isn't about any one person or family. It's about what you feel when someone you thought you trusted makes you question your entire story. When things are erased, when you feel invisible. We all deserve to be seen. The chat flashed beneath me. Lucky Mom. Yes, you're not alone. Bluepine 22. Thank you for sharing. My throat caught. I don't have a dramatic twist or reunion to promise, just the truth of finding your feet after the storm. I'll tell you what happened, but more than that, I'll tell you how I survive when my past tries to speak louder than my present. I took a breath and began to share. I replayed the baby shower glitch. I showed parts of the server logs. I censored identifying details, but the timestamps were there. I spoke of deleted photos, stolen moments, a lifetime of subtle erasures. I didn't gloat. I didn't drop her name. I didn't dramatize. I simply told what I lived. Midway through, I felt myself shaking. Sharing that part of my story made me feel both exposed and alive in the same heartbeat. I felt the power of claiming my side of the narrative. I shifted. It wasn't easy. It still isn't. There are nights I wake remembering, wondering if I'll ever be enough. Then I remember this little guy. I tilted the camera to catch Tommy waving from behind, mouth full of goldfish crackers, a grin bigger than the world. Chat exploded with hearts and ahs. Later, a name appeared in the livestream feed. Shore Legacy wrote, "This helped me understand why I keep shrinking in my family." I paused, blinked. If that's you, thank you. You don't have to shrink. I signed off with, "Take care, to yourself, to your story, to your peace." Over the next week, the video gained unexpected momentum. Comments flooded in, some from women who'd been disinherited, others from daughters quieted by parents. A few dads opened up. Never put your daughter in a photo with the family? That hurts. A handful asked questions. How did you muster courage to speak? Was it scary? My reply, yes, every day. That conversation didn't feel exploitative. It felt sacred. It felt like building connective tissue with strangers in different cities, some on the other side of the country, all with stories hiding beneath polite exteriors. Cassie texted, "I watched it 3 times. We should celebrate." We did, in a casual pizza night, with Lorraine joining by video. A small group, but the kind you want in your corner when you're trying something new, something real. Then the message came, from Viviane. A notification popped on my phone just as I was pulling a meeting chair across the table. "I watched your video. Thank you for saying it your way." The ping stopped me. A tremble edged across my fingers. I stared at the text, took a slow breath. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I deleted the message. A visceral moment, decision fully formed. She didn't need permission anymore. She never had. My phone pinged again. "I just want to share my side too, if you'll let me." I felt a flicker of something, compassion, regret, relief. Whatever it was, I didn't reply. A few days later, I was at the community clinic, sorting files, when my supervisor came in with a note. Someone wanted to speak at our next support circle. It was someone I knew all too well. Vivian's name had entered the space she'd once controlled. Now she was asking to share her story, to acknowledge those same wounds, and presumably, take up some room in a space she once extinguished me from. My breath stalled. I closed my eyes. Part of me wanted to say no. Part of me recognized this as part of the healing she asked for. I leaned out and asked, "Let's give her a chance, not for her. For whoever needs to see things disrupt around forgiveness and boundaries." My supervisor blinked, nodded. "Good call." That night, I closed my laptop with a satisfying click. Prayer plant leaves brushed past my fingertips. Tommy jumped into my lap, pointing at a picture of us together by the window. He asked, "You happy, Mom?" I ruffled his hair. "Yes, I'm happy because I found my voice." He looked back at the picture and beamed. "I love you, Mom." And I thought, if my story can do that, if it can echo in a stranger's heart, if it can reshape the idea of mother and son, sister and sister, then every word, every tear, every moment of courage was worth more than I ever realized. The morning fog clung to the trees outside my window like something alive, soft and persistent. I watched it from the kitchen with a mug of chamomile tea in my hand, the warmth seeping through my fingers like something I had earned. Everything in the house was quiet except the low hum of the heater and the occasional creak of wood. I used to fear the quiet. Now it wrapped around me like armor. It had been 4 months since I'd uploaded that video, the one that cracked open a dam I never knew so many people were holding back. I hadn't set out to go viral, but when something honest cuts deep enough, it doesn't just echo, it roots. I heard from women in their 60s, from teenagers hiding their grief behind locked bedroom doors, from men who never realized what silence cost their sisters or daughters. I didn't read all the comments, there were too many, but the ones I did shifted something in me. I wasn't alone. Not for a single breath. Tommy came downstairs with his usual morning burst of energy, rubbing sleep from his eyes and dragging his stuffed shark behind him. "Are we going to the coast today?" he asked. "We are," I smiled. "We're packing lunch. Blankets. You can bring the shark." He nodded seriously, like we were going into battle. The drive was long but familiar. The Oregon coast had always calmed something in me. The expanse of it. The unapologetic sound of the waves. I parked near a cliffside overlook where there was a narrow path down to a beach barely anyone visited on weekdays. Tommy ran ahead, stopping only to point at gulls or throw rocks into the wind. We set up near a driftwood log, the air cool but not cold. I pulled out my journal, a new one, leather-bound, blank pages. I hadn't written anything yet, but I brought it because today needed a ritual, not closure, something quieter, more sacred. I stared at the ocean and thought about every version of myself I had once molded to survive. The quiet one, the accommodating one, the invisible one. I had shed each, layer by layer, like an old skin that didn't fit anymore. And standing in their place was a woman who had learned not just to speak, but to hear herself. A mother who knew peace didn't mean silence. It meant freedom. Vivian hadn't reached out again since her last message. I knew she was still in town, working part-time, taking therapy seriously. Cassie had run into her once at the library, said she looked healthy, calm, unrecognizable, but in a good way. I didn't ask for more. Some people write themselves back into your story. Others leave. Vivian had become a closed chapter, not with bitterness, but acceptance. She would always be part of the book, but no longer the author of mine. Back home that evening, Tommy and I baked cookies. He insisted on chocolate chip with peanut butter, his newest favorite. We listened to old songs. I danced in the kitchen with him until our sides hurt from laughing. When he went to bed, I sat on the couch and opened my laptop. I hadn't posted anything since the video. I didn't feel the need to explain or justify. But something inside me whispered, it's time for one more chapter. Not for them. For me. I opened a blank post. My story didn't end with confrontation. It didn't end with revenge. It ended in a small cottage, beside the boy I'd do anything for, on a coast that reminded me how wide life could be. I paused. Breathed. I used to think forgiveness was for the person who hurt you, but now I know. It's about deciding you're no longer willing to carry their shame. I forgave not because she asked, not because she changed, but because I wanted my life back. I looked at the blinking cursor and wrote the final line. If you're standing in a life you no longer recognize, please know, it's not too late to rewrite it. I didn't ask for likes. I didn't beg for shares. I just posted. Then I closed the screen and let the quiet settle again. 2 weeks later, a small envelope arrived in the mail. No return address. Inside was a photo. Me. Tommy. On that beach. From a distance, clearly taken without us knowing. On the back, written in looping ink. Thank you for not burning it down. Thank you for showing me how to start over. No signature, but I knew. I put it in the drawer with the first letter. Not to hold on to. Just to remember that even when you walk away, your footsteps matter. Cassie came over that night with wine and news. She had applied to a fellowship in DC and got it. You'll come visit, right? She asked. Only if you leave me a key to your houseplant collection, I smiled. You're doing okay, aren't you? She asked after a beat. I nodded. I'm more than okay. I'm whole. She raised her glass. To women who chose themselves. To peace, I replied. To stories with open endings, she added. Sometimes healing doesn't look like grand gestures. It looks like choosing silence over chaos, peace over applause, and walking forward when no one claps for you. I learned that letting go isn't weakness. It's knowing you no longer need to be invited into spaces where you were only ever tolerated. I didn't need revenge. I needed freedom, and I found it by choosing myself, over and over again. What about you? Have you ever had to walk away from someone who was supposed to love you? What did that look like for you? If this story touched you or reminded you of something personal, let me know where you're watching from, or just type "I'm here" in the comments. And if it didn't resonate, I still want to hear why. This space is for all of us. If you felt something while watching, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the next story. Your story might be next.